JD said, Doug, it's taken you 20 years to go from 0 to 1 billion in market cap. He goes, I think I can help you get to 10 billion in 5.
And did you believe that?
Yes.
Doug, thanks for hosting. Thanks for having me here.
I think you're hosting, but or am I hosting?
In your office. So it's a blend.
Oh, hosting in the office. I thought you meant hosting the podcast.
No, I'm hosting the podcast, but you're hosting in the office. So I'm excited for this. We're actually doing this in Vantage, which another guest on the show developed the building, Steve McClure from Spectrum Companies. But LendingTree, you're the founder and CEO. It's a legendary company, and it's a company that I feel like I've been seeing advertising for since I was a kid. So it felt special to be able to meet you because it's such an iconic marketplace that you've created and revolutionary, certainly at the time.
Oh, please.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this. So I'll let you introduce yourself. So founder and CEO of LendingTree, but I would like to hear the story and the evolution of the business. Obviously, it's evolved massively, different products, also different market cycles. So can you give an overview of LendingTree and what it is today? And then we can go back in time to hear the evolution.
Sure. So LendingTree is a marketplace for loans and insurance. And our intent is to help consumers comparison shop and make the best recommendation for them to make the smartest decision. We make money from insurance companies and lenders who are paying us on a per introduction basis, but it really translates into what is their cost per funded loan goal. And then that's on the revenue side. So the unit economics are the number of loans that lenders are closing and their margin, how much of that they're willing to spend on marketing with us. On the other side, then we take that revenue and invest it in advertising. With loans, unfortunately, it's a very infrequent purchase. So we have found over the years that we need to market to people at the time that they're more in the market. We're working on some better lifetime value stuff, but that's the core of the business. So we're constantly trying to work both sides of the market, drive in more lenders, more lender demand, and also then match that with the supply of customers on the other side, and then build a great product in the middle that hopefully converts more and more of those customers into closed loans, because that feeds the flywheel. The more the lenders close, the more they bid up, the more we can then spend on advertising. So those ads you referenced. So today, for example, we're not running ads on TV.
Right.
Because the unit economics of our markets are such that only online advertising really pays off for us now. And that's because the combination of higher interest rates or just more restrictive credit policy means that our lending products in particular aren't as big as they will be as credit policy starts to change a little bit, and then we'll be able to lean back into advertising.
Wow.
So the model's the model's always been the same. It's just the matter of the unit economics changing.
Interesting. Well, it seems like a good time to have your business maturing, obviously in a positive sense. You've been around for so long, but with the ability and so much insight into data to be able to strategically market to the people at the right time, and with maybe AI right now, I'm sure we can get into that later.
Amen.
Seems like a good time, an exciting time. So to go back in time, can we start with the origin of LendingTree? Yep. So you're trying to buy a condo in Pittsburgh, and then you're a little frazzled to buy it. So what is the origin of it? And then
so the origin, and a lot of Jim Collins once said this, that entrepreneurial ideas come from wet feet moments. He talked about LL Bean. People go in the forest, they got wet feet. LL Bean decided to make boots. Mm-hmm. And my wet feet moment was when I was a CPA. I was an accountant working for Pricewaterhouse. So I had decent financial acumen, and I ended up having to, put the tie on and go to the bank. And at the time, this was before the internet, it's 1994. I looked in the internet at the time, which was the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, saw the banks that were there, picked the one with the lowest rate, went to that bank. They said, it's a condo. That's not the rate for you. Like my LTV, wah, wah, wah. So then I went to the next one. and sort of cycled through all of those banks. At the same time, I was fortunate that U.S. Steel, my only client, had a natural gas pipeline business, and I was picked for some reason to be like what I would call derivatives guy.
Interesting.
And derivatives were just coming on the stage then, and accountants were grappling with whether people were trading or whether they were and speculating or whether it was a hedge.
Interesting.
And so I had to go in and unpack these derivative transactions and figure out where it was a hedge. Well, in the process of that, I picked up another client called CNG Energy Services, which was an early deregulated energy subsidiary. And I got very close to a marketplace called Basis. Is this okay that we're geeking out like this?
Yeah.
Basis is the difference. So if you're a factory in Pittsburgh
Right.
and you're hedging the price of your natural gas, the contracts you're buying settle at the Henry Hub in Texas.
Got it.
So there's a difference in price between the Henry Hub and Pittsburgh and Cleveland.
Of course.
And it's basically the cost of transportation. Well, you can, based on local supply and demand, the cost in those local areas is going up and down, and it's the difference between that and the Henry Hub price that is the basis. Wow. So you could all of a sudden trade the difference in price between Cleveland and Pittsburgh, Seattle and wherever, and you could do almost anything. And I watched these marketplaces go from nothing, where guys were on the phone and writing stuff on a chalkboard,
Right.
and making trades, to where it was very, very automated, and it blew up so fast. And I was thinking back to my mortgage situation going, wait a minute, you can trade this like obscure freaking financial instrument, and you can't even like go get price clarity on a mortgage somewhere.
Of course.
It's ridiculous. And so that was really the aha. And so then I started thinking of this as a two-sided marketplace. And started, I was always kind of an economics geek. And so like free markets sort of, got me going. And I was thinking like, if you put all the lenders in competition, but you also like, reward them with a really profitable business model, they'll get better over time. They'll get more competitive pricing. They'll be more upfront. Their sales processes will be better. They'll answer the phone. Like my first customer I sent, the average response time was like 8 days.
Oh my goodness.
So you'd fill out a form online. 8 days later, you get a call from a lender going, "Hey, Matt, got your information on LendingTree. Love to talk to you about that mortgage loan." And so we put together something called the Best Practices Manual and showed that close rates are correlated to, not surprisingly, really good customer satisfaction and speed. And so we convinced lenders that lower your margin, but do more transactions so that you've got really competitive pricing. And what ended up happening with those early lenders. Yeah. So first off, when I started selling, I went to the banks and I said, "Hey, bank," my first thing I did before I went to business school in 1996, early 96, I got the Thomson Financial Directory out and I started looking up chief marketing officers at banks. And the company was named Bankwire then. I talked to PNC. I think it was Integra at the time.
Wow.
Then I went to some smaller banks, and I'm like, we're going to help you automate the way you do loans. And I learned fairly quickly that banks don't do what I would later know as outbound outreach. That banks only really service you calling them and saying, "Hey, I'd like to know what a mortgage rate is today." And then that loan officer doesn't have to sell and say, "Well, Matt, here's why the PNC or whatever bank loan is better than the other one you're considering, because I'm a really great bank and I'm going to get back to you fast and I'm going to give you good service." Instead, it's more like, "Well, Matt, let me see if I can get you approved. And so then it's a very different power balance. So I learned that this was not the way banks were wired, and I didn't know where to go. And I ended up at small mortgage companies, which in those days had loan officers. But what you would do is all of your volume came through realtors. And so people would go, like, they would get hired, and you'd go to your friends and family and do their loans. And then you'd go, like, buy donuts or bagels, and you take them to a realtor shop, and you get to know the realtors. And the realtors, who aren't allowed to pay you to do you're not allowed to pay them, but they send you referrals. And you do, like, a few loans a month at really high margin. And one of my earliest lenders looked at me and goes, "Wait a minute, this can be totally different. I can just give somebody," because basically the loan officer in that case is doing their own lead generation.
Of course, yeah.
They're doing their own, they're finding just
Business
like you, and
development,
they're doing their own BD. The guy said, "Wait a minute, I can just give somebody a desk and a phone who's really good at sales, and you can do the lead generation, and you can do the marketing." And I was like, ding, ding, ding. And then we tried to figure out how to price it. We came up with this transmit fee for everything that matched them and a closed loan fee. Right. That's changed today to all transmit fees, which we could talk about if you wanted to. But that was the early evolution. It was really working in partnership with these lenders. The consumer side, believe it or not, always worked from day one.
Wow.
One of the very earliest things I did when I was in business school in 96 to 97, and I was debating whether to do this, is I spent, I believe it was $500 on Yahoo ads. And at the time you could buy every loan type, like mortgage, auto loans, blah, 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 blah. And the company I think by then was called Credit Source. And I said, fill out this form, Credit Source USA, get the credit you deserve, fill this out. We're going to have banks compete for your business. I didn't have any lenders. And
so this was a test.
This was a test. Okay. And I got hundreds of people willing to give me their name, address, social security number, like the loan that they want, like blah, 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 permission to pull their credit. And that was, so I used that to model out what my customer acquisition cost would be. Turned out that was wrong because Yahoo just was faster at ad pop-ups. That's another thing. And then from there, I knew like what it would take to like I was trying to estimate conversion rates and stuff on the lender side. Wow. But I had that side kind of nailed. Now it turned out TV was a lot more, and so those customer acquisition costs went up significantly. But the unit economics on the other side were supporting it. Wow. But that was the early kind of thinking on it.
So at the time, so this 96, 97, 98 kind of range, the first couple of years of the company, was there anything else that was an open marketplace for lending products at the time?
No, what other competitors were doing, and there was a company called eLoan at the time, which had gone public. And to so much fanfare, it was another Silicon Valley thing. We were in, I guess, Charlotte by that time, and they were basically an online lender, which was really, really easy to set up. Like if you set up a website, call yourself eLoan, right? They fill out the form, goes to your in-house person, you give them eLoan pricing, and you can get that up and running easily. The problem is, and I always felt that now you're just another lender. You're a bank. Mm-hmm. And so what we did with those early guys, and it's sort of, and this happened in personal loans and some other places too, what we did is we made them clients. So I said, hey, eLoan, you're not a competitor, you're a client. Come on in. And then they got dependent on us. So we became sort of like Google, like the search engine for customer acquisition in our space. Wow. And when lenders set up their campaigns, they set it up very much like we buy Google campaigns. They set up filters and types of customers they want, how much they're willing to pay, how much volume they can handle. That's still very much the same. And then the difference now is that it's been this way for a while, but is that all the pricing in the early days, the pricing of the loan would literally be a lender opening a book and seeing what it is and then typing it into this website that we gave them today. That's all done automatically.
Wow.
But I was looking the other day, and the spread in personal loans between the high and the low. Mm-hmm. So you fill out a personal loan request. The spread between the high and the low on average is 700 basis points.
Wow.
So like 8%, 13%.
Wow.
And massive swing for the consumer. And so in the offline world or whatever, you might if you just apply for one lender, it might be the 13% guy, it might be the 8% guy, and you're never going to know. And, so that's what we give the customer, and it saves them a lot of money, and they love it.
This episode of the Deal Ranch podcast is brought to you by Hux Curry Advisors. Hux Curry Advisors is the complete real estate consulting and advisory firm in the Myrtle Beach market, providing the services needed for any stage of your project, whether it's strategic planning, site selection, due diligence, project management, land planning, or anything in between. If you're an institutional investor looking to expand with a strategy, a small business transitioning from renting to real estate ownership, a landowner seeking maximum return, or a national retailer searching for a key location in this top growth market, reach out to Hux Curry Advisors for all real estate consulting needs in the Myrtle Beach MSA. To learn more about Hux Curry or connect with the team, go to huxcurryadvisors.com by clicking the link in the show notes. So in the early stages, how hard was getting those first couple people to come on platform? Then also at the time, I don't know how you financed the business, but you also had to build a website that obviously had a pretty good system to interact with the other, with all these, to communicate to all these lenders. So how hard were those first couple lenders to get on platform? And then when did you feel like you had, okay, hey, we got our first PNC or first bigger bank?
It's a great question. So we should come back to at some point how the business almost didn't get started. But I was very fortunate within about 9 months. I had a co-founder who was a friend of mine from college named Jamie Bennett. Mm-hmm. We had another co-founder later who was a guy named Rick Stiegler who's passed away. He's my CTO. He was my CTO. And he came very, very early, and we were really, really lucky. I learned later in business school that it's statistically impossible for a non-technical entrepreneur to start a tech business unless you have that person, because you need to iterate back and forth. So, for example, I hired Rick from Wall Street, who had built trading systems, like high volume trading stuff that needed to be like precise and accurate in volume and speed.
Wow.
Because I was thinking about this as a marketplace, that it was going to be like high volume trading back and forth, loans closing. The initial concept was you'd fill out a form, I would go search all the lenders and bring back to you an offer, and then you would accept it, and then the loan would close. Now, okay, that was me knowing literally nothing about the loan process. And so Rick and I envisioned this automated, which was our patent actually, the automated file transfer system, which would take your information and transmit it into a system at the bank so that it would be readable. This is 1996, so it would be readable by them. And then they could then send us a message back with the offer. So we got ready for this. And our first lender said, that's too complicated. Like, we don't really have a system on this side. Mm. We look up in a book. So can you fax us the customer data? We're like, fax, damn it. So fax became the first way that we got our lenders. And I learned then kind of the principle, I guess, of making lemonade out of lemons, because we wanted to build this high-tech solution. And here we were now, like, faxing stuff. The second evolution of that was they would fax it and look it up in a book. The second evolution was that they would then, if they had a system, they would take that information and rekey it into another system, see the information, and then go back and type it into our system. And so you saw this, like, just, it was
monotonous cycle.
Inefficient, but it was more efficient than the other way.
Right.
And we just had to adjust with where our customers were ready to do then. And that evolved even years later. I remember talking to my first bigger bank, which was Wachovia at the time. And this is probably in 1999. And I said, I'm building this great thing. Get up and running. I've now got mortgage lenders up and running and it's doing really well there. We don't have any people that are banks. Mm-hmm. I'm like, this is going to be awesome. And the head of tech there, head of like innovation in the internet or something, like they all had this person then, said, Doug, this is like way too complicated. I'm like, and I learned then another powerful question, which was, I just sort of exasperation. I said, what's a big win for you? After she basically heard my whole pitch and said no. And she said, Doug, I just need a website up and running by the end of the year that can take a mortgage application.
And they didn't have that
they didn't have
in-house
that.
at the time?
No.
Wow.
And I have no way to do that. And I went back and I said to Rick, I said, interesting. What could we do to get into like the B2B licensing business? And how much money could we make? She had told, and then I said, how much is in your budget? And I think it was $1 million or $2 million, like $2 million, get this website built. And this was in the fall. So like she's sitting there, how do I build a website, right? And Rick basically said, it's pretty easy. We're going to effectively, Doug, go copy like the LendingTree website, ran on a server, ran on a computer, right? It wasn't like, didn't need 300 servers. We're going to copy all that code. We're going to paste it on another server. Then we're going to go in here and do find everywhere that it said LendingTree. And we're going to put Wachovia in there. And then we came up how to use our back end for them, which before is taking in volume and then allocating it out among 5 lenders for each customer. We said, how could we set this up so that we could we basically we used our system to create their workflows. They had call centers in like 4 different areas. So we set them up as like Wachovia 1, Wachovia 2, Wachovia 3, Wachovia 4 inside of this copy over here. We set up Wachovia 1's filters to be the geography that they wanted those volume from. We set up these filters be these. And then that basically became a routing mechanism. Yeah. And then a couple of years later, Microsoft started a dead-on competitor called HomeAdvisor that was going to become the marketplace for all things, for all mortgage loans, as well as real estate. And it was a direct competitor. And they said, we're building this marketplace. You can be a node. And I said, screw that. I said to our team, like, we can't be a node on their thing. Then we're nothing. Correct. We got to be the marketplace. And at the time, they were partnering with Bank of America. And we convinced Bank of America that this software thing for Microsoft was going to take too long. We already had a customer in Wachovia, and we can customize it for you. And they paid us probably another $5 million over the years to build their mortgage website. And
Bank of America.
Bank of America. And those millions carried us. We ended up not doing it long term, which I'm kind of regretting now. But it would fund our product development. We'd go to the banks and they'd say, well, we wish we had a feature or a button that would do X, Y, and Z. We'd say, well, the code doesn't have that. But if you want it, it's a customization. And we'd build it on their system and make it work on our system. It was fantastic.
Yeah, they're financing your product development.
Yeah, it was amazing.
So, not to steal on it too long, how did you end up convincing Bank of America at the time to not work with Microsoft, being a 2-year-old company?
Microsoft was so behind and delayed, and they're overcomplicating the problem, and we were already sitting there. Wow. And so we convinced them to just have an option. Microsoft was going to be they were setting it up so they have something called sourcing institutions, processing institutions, and basically investing institutions. And Bank of America was going to be like this big processing institution it was their theory. And we convinced them that, listen, fine, then run 2 software platforms. Put us in there and then put Microsoft in there. We're ready to go sooner. Right. And then put theirs in later. You've already sunk tens of millions of dollars into it, and just run them both and see which one you like. They liked ours.
So at that time where you were taking in money for building these specific bank kind of loan application pages or center websites, were you were still focused on building the broader LendingTree platform at the time?
100%.
Okay, interesting.
But by that time, by the B of A time, we had gone public. and the market had completely we went public February, I believe, 1st, 2000, and on the 15th the market started to crater.
So what was that like?
It was awful because, and this is where you get into deals and capital allocation, and this is where Doug has been dumb over time, or I hate to use, don't use the third person, but I've been dumb. Let me really own it.
Well, to stop you there, I think,
go ahead.
So why did you go public at that time? So the three of you owned the company, and then you needed to raise some...
by then, Jamie Bennett wasn't with me anymore.
Yep.
I had a finance guy named Bob Wilson who became sort of my number 2 partner. So Bob and I were like 50-50 partners. Okay. Jamie, I think, owned 10 or 20. I'm sorry. Rick owned 10 or 20%, but then we were raising a lot of capital. And I counsel entrepreneurs now that you don't need to do this and you don't need to go in the front door. Like, even you're being entrepreneurial, but by going like, I'm going to write a business plan and send it out to a bunch of venture capitalists, like, isn't the most entrepreneurial way to do it.
Of course.
Frankly.
Yeah.
And there's lots of other options, but like I was running down that path of like being the tech entrepreneur, and you went public, and like, it was 1999, right? But that was petering out. Thankfully, because of that E-loan thing, none of the big tier VCs really took an interest until the late 1999. And by then, we had mapped out a strategy that we were going to do significant brand building. And so we needed to raise more money. So by the time we went public, I only owned 6% of the company.
Wow.
And we had raised by then about, $50 million in one round. Before that, like 15, then 10, then like ones and twos. And each time it was probably like a 30% or something dilution event. So anyway, you go to the IPO, and I was sitting there with the banker, and he's laying out in the little grid he does how much money we can raise and what the other stock price will be, because he knows the demand and therefore our market cap, right? So he's... And we could have raised more money. Stock would have been lower. And I said, by then, our business was very, very predictable. And I said, screw that, Lee. I have 6 months of visibility, and I know the next 2 quarters are in the bag. In 6 months, we'll just do a secondary and raise that money at a higher valuation. And it was probably only about we raised $44 million in the IPO. It was probably like $15 million short of what I needed, but I figured that's an easy thing. And sure as shit, 2 weeks later, the market craps out, and our stock goes it had gone from 12 to 20 on the first day. It ends up at like $2 a share. And I have to go in 2001, hat in hand, raising money from anybody I could, and turned out by the grace of God that my original investors, my original angel investors, put in between a loan for $5 million and us cutting costs, and then they did a convertible preferred at a time when people were showing me like triple liquidation preferreds and all kinds of like restrictions and stuff. These guys did like just a straight, clean convertible preferred. The other stuff would have completely crammed everybody down on the common shareholders. It would have been terrible.
Wow.
And these guys like did the right thing, and our company then got to what we now call VMD profitability, where the marketing costs are less than your revenue. And then we knew it was a matter of volume. And so then we were kind of on our way, but it was, but yeah, I've made the mistake over the years of thinking that when the things are going well, and it's not necessarily market related, that's going to continue, or I'll also see us as undervalued relative to others in the market. And think, what the heck, these guys are at 30 times EBITDA and we're at 22. Like, we got another 8 multiple points in here. Well, and so what I realized when we were doing our strategy this year that if we just were better at understanding and having a really, really clear view on our valuation, whether it's overinflated or underinflated, because the market's always got it wrong. It's just a question of where.
How much, yeah.
And then strategically decide what to do about it. And sometimes, which I don't do because I don't like dilution, we should be selling stock. And sometimes we should be buying stock. And sometimes we should be buying a company, and other times we shouldn't be. And so I've learned that lesson now the hard way. And what we did is I put a group on the board called our finance committee, and they are responsible for like guiding the capital allocation of the company. And they're all like the really smart finance people that are normally like on an audit committee, and in an audit committee, nothing ever changes. So these guys are thinking about our valuations in the markets, some of the parts, like all the things that these guys should focus on. And they're doing it with our treasurer and CFO, and it's, we haven't made any great decisions. Well, we just refinanced our debt a couple weeks ago,
yeah.
And so we're doing it step by step, getting back to where we need to be.
No doubt. I want to talk about that a little bit later as we kind of push through. So early on, between that 2000 and then 2003 acquisition or sale, right? Where did you reinvest all of your time and focus? So the way I view the business, which could be incorrect, but you have this consumer side. Okay, we need to spend to get marketing. We need to allocate time, sales reps, and strategy to getting new lenders on the platform. And then we also have a platform. So those three things. Maybe those are others.
No, I think so. I would. When you say the platform, I would call that product.
Okay, product. So, how did you divvy up your time, and then where did most of the cash go that you're reinvesting or that you're raising? Where was that spent?
100%. So 100% the money we were raising was going back into marketing.
Okay.
Not raising. I'm sorry. The money we were making.
Right.
And that is, Jim Collins was a mentor of mine and was actually influential in me even starting the business. Wow. And so I bought into his flywheel stuff, hook, line, and sinker, and set the company up using all the stuff. And so I wanted a flywheel business. And so the notion of our business really simply, as I sort of talked about, is if I'm getting $100 per customer, over on the lender side, and I go spend 90 over here, I'm making $10. When this thing goes to 150 on the lender side, go spend 125 and have 30% more volume that you can now feed to them. Oh, now they're going to now, and the other interesting thing is if you have another marketplace, every time a lender buys more with us, generally speaking, they're buying less from somebody else. The subgroup got big. Yeah. Therefore, my unit economics just got stronger than theirs, while theirs got weaker.
Right.
So over here on the search market, they're cutting their bids and we're increasing ours. We're gaining more market share.
Right.
And then with that, we got to the point where, well, it was before we went public because we signed the purchase order in the car, my CFO and I, to buy $50 million of advertising, and the deal wasn't done yet.
Wow.
And we're like, do we want to do this? It was a couple days away, but yeah, we did it. And that's because in '99, I had hired Tom Redden as my CMO. Tom had run the Coca-Cola brand for the United States business. And we had this offer from AOL that said, hey, we're going to make LendingTree the exclusive loan provider in our money section that they didn't have. And it was basically going to be us co-branded inside of there. Mm-hmm. And you can do that for $15 million a year. In the we said, well, when's it going to be done? They said, probably a year from now. I said, do we start paying a year from now? They said, no. You start paying now.
Interesting.
And in the meantime, before that's done, we're going to give you run-of-site banner ads, which is, are like the least valuable thing on the planet. And we got in a fight, my co-founder Jamie and I, about it. And I'm like, this doesn't pencil out. I mean, the accountant and me came back. I'm like, this doesn't pencil out. Like, how many customers are we going to get? What's going to be the cost per customer acquisition? And he's like, and AOL said, Doug, you don't understand. You can go public from this deal alone. And I'm like, the market might think it's all that sexy, but like if you remember at the time, well, you were probably a kid, but probably weren't even born. Everybody was shooting for gross revenue.
Right.
And gross revenue. Well, I kept saying, like, anybody can get gross revenue. Like, you can get gross revenue by spending more than your revenue.
So how are we making money?
Through money. Yeah. You can't do it. Mm-hmm. And anyway, so with that focus on the unit economics, so then my CMO Tom Red, he goes, I can make TV pencil out.
Wow.
And that's when we started some of the earliest internet TV ads. But it was always done with like a ruthless direct marketing sense of making sure that it performed. And if it didn't, we changed it.
How did to keep in order, and I don't want to pigeonhole you too much on the past. So,
sorry.
No, you're good. So that was all perfect. I just don't want to forget. So how did the sale to IAC come? And then that also, I want to know how that was for you, because it looked like left, went to there as COO and president, and then came back in 2008. So how was that, the entrepreneur kind of letting your...
Yes, that was fun. There's a lot of good stories in there. So in late 2002, an investment bank named Allen & Company, with my friend Brian Regan, who's in private equity now, he gets a call on his phone and it says, Herb Allen is coming to meet you. And I'm like, who's Herb Allen? We look up and Herb Allen is like a multi-billionaire media investor who also has something called Allen & Company. They have the famous Sun Valley conference every year where you see people on CNBC all wearing the same thing. That's the Allen & Company conference, and everybody goes to it that they invite. And they were at the time, a woman there named Shanna Fisher was looking around for busted internet valuations where the companies were actually pretty valuable. And they're doing this on behalf of IAC, which wasn't named IAC at the time, but and IAC had bought Expedia, Ticketmaster, City Search at the time, and they wanted a business in financial services and real estate. Interestingly, we had one of the first real estate platforms starting all the way back in 1999, maybe even earlier. And we were working towards having home listings online. And at the time that was prohibited by the National Association of Realtors as a whole. They were trying to prevent it. And Allen & Company showed the deal to IAC. And we went through a negotiation, and something that for me, particularly as an accountant, I always felt that when I raise money, I'm working for them. And I got to do what's right by the shareholders. And in the negotiation with IAC, as we went back and forth, their stock popped up on we were a little bit apart. They had made a verbal promise that we would do this at this number of this conversion ratio. Their stock popped up, and several dissident board members on my board said, that's fine, we'll do it. We'll do it now. Yeah. They went back to IC and they're like, wait a minute, whoa. We assumed that this is that was based on that price, not this. And we said, no, if you do it at that price, the deal's done, and they did it. And I said to my shareholders, my board, I said, I think we will be way bigger than this, but this is the right deal right now. It was 35 times EBITDA. So what do you do, right? You have to do it. And then I'll let you ask a question, but the IAC years were interesting and amazing at the same time. So.
That's what I was going to ask next. So what was that? Did you no involvement with LendingTree as opposed to being, I guess, a part of the parent that owned it? So what was your role when you
so LendingTree, so when they bought the company, Barry said, you're going to be the head of our financial services and real estate division. And he had also, at the time, in 2000, had hired Jack Welch to be his management, coach, management consultant. Jack was doing this with 10 companies. He had just retired. And he picked Barry Diller, who runs IAC and owns it, to be his coach. And with that came access to Jack for all of the business CEOs. So you had Ticketmaster, Home Shopping Network, the personals businesses, Match and others.
Yep.
Then you had this financial service and real estate, which was a pipsqueak. We had a catalog division. We had a retail that owned like 10 catalogs. And so we would have these group meetings, and I was like the smallest little company. Wow. And so we really were kind of irrelevant, but I used that as an opportunity to really soak up. I was always also a business kind of geek and like wanted to learn, advance. And so I was talking and soaking up everything that Jack was saying. And they were on a journey at the time where they wanted to go. They realized that they were getting a conglomerate discount on the stock market because they owned everything from LendingTree to Home Shopping Network to catalogs, like I just said, and a bunch of internet businesses. And they were starting to think, gee, how could we be an operating company? They got Jack Welch sitting there saying, you got to be an operating company, you got to be an operating company. And so then in 2003, I get a call from Barry. He says, can you go up to New York? I'm like, sure. And I'm like, not sure what the hell's going on. Mm-hmm. And he says, I'd like you to be the COO of the company. I'm like, oh, wow. Holy shit.
Yeah.
A week later, he calls me and says, Doug, it is not a fait accompli, but I talked to Jack about this. I didn't tell Jack it is a fait accompli, but I talked to him about this, and he hates the idea. He does not like the idea because he took, I'll tell you what he said later. Mm-hmm. And you're going to need to go talk to him. And I said, okay, great. And I was nervous as crap.
Yeah.
And then about an hour later, my assistant at the time, I really wish I still had this. Remember the old note things? Like if somebody called you and said who from subject matter?
Right. Yeah.
My assistant, while I'm like in the next conference room, takes a call from Jack Welch looking for me and says, I'm sorry he's not available at the moment. And takes a note, writes from Jack Welch, subject, please call, whatever. And I come out of the meeting and I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? She's like, I'm like, why didn't you get me out of the meeting? She goes, who's Jack Welch?
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, Anyway, so I flew up and interviewed with him the next day.
How'd that interview go?
That was simply outstanding. It was one of the most interesting things in my life about leadership. I was nervous as heck. First off, I call him up and he's like, when can you get up here? I'm like, well, I'll check the flights. And he's like, forget that. Like he's honest. Forget that. I'll get the IC plane to come pick you up. How about tomorrow? I'm like, sure. So that basically I was leaving that night, so it was the same day. Like, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. So I went up that night to Boston and I had scratched down a bunch of thoughts about IEC. I'd been a few years into it. We have breakfast at his house. His new wife, Susie, was there at the time. And a woman named Roseanne Badowski, who's amazing, was his assistant. And we have breakfast at this very nice table. And people serving you, and then we sit down at the couch and he says, so Doug, you're here to tell me why this dumb fucking idea is a good one. And for the next probably 45 minutes, he drilled me.
Wow.
Like I've never been drilled before. Why is this a good idea? What are you going to do over here? What would you do in this situation? Da-da-da-da-da. And at some point, I'm getting goosebumps. He stopped and he said, Doug, this is the right decision and you are the right guy to do this. If I met you at GE, I would have given you a battlefield promotion on the spot. I'm going to work with you on this. We're going to make it work. Let's start talking about how we're going to do that. And then he started saying, listen, you need this guy to report to you over here, da-da-da-da. You really, and then he became my coach. And from that standpoint, because I would always just suck him dry for information as much as I could, and that's how we built it into a operating company for a brief period of time. I guess it's more of one now, but. And then they decided to break it up.
That's insane. So when looking back on that conversation, do you think he knew you were the right guy for the job the whole time? Or do you think...
No, I think at first he started off by telling me why COOs are a stupid position. He said something to the effect of either the COO is running the show and therefore the CEO is a puppet, or vice versa. And I'm like, oh, all right. And, I talked to him about like where I was strong and what the business needed and that it was really balancing it out with being a deal shop because I'm more of an operator type. And he liked it. And so I sat here and we talked about how I was going to do it and, what my goals were and what I saw that needed to happen. And basically my view of it at the time when I looked at what I now think of as effectuation or entrepreneurial thinking, I was looking at like, what does this company have that can be leveraged? And I realized it was talent.
Right.
I realized that like Ticketmaster has great people and LendingTree has some great people and these people have great people, but they're all capped in their careers because they only have a career, even though we're all owned by the same company, we only have a career over here.
Right.
And so once we said we're going to have, so Johnny Taylor from Charlotte, who also was the head of SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management, the guy you see on all the SHRM commercials everywhere. He was our head of HR and moved to New York with me. And I hired a head of strategy from retail whose name is Jay Haradi. He's now the CEO of TED. And we developed a strategy of how we're going to do this a lot through talent, and talent started to move. We look for the best people in the right places and then put them on the biggest thing. So, we found a really small company called gifts.com. And those two guys were amazing, like really creative digital retailers. We took them and said, will you guys go run Home Shopping Network's digital business, which was nascent. It was mostly on the telephone. Wow. And their website looked like crap, didn't everybody trying. And those two guys ended up being the co-founders of Peloton, John Foley and William Lynch. And they completely turned that around. So we did that kind of all over the place as much as we could. Wow. And then in 2003 and 2008, there was a pretty famous conflict at the time between Barry Diller and John Malone. John Malone had invested in IAC and had what's known as high vote stock. So as soon as Barry wasn't running the company, then Liberty Media could step in, and Greg Maffei, who was the CEO at the time, was kind of needling IAC and everything, saying, I'm going to own it at some point, I'm going to own it. And so they were trying to work a deal where IAC would buy back its high vote stock in exchange for Home Shopping Network going to QVC. And they couldn't agree on it. And so this wasn't the only reason. Victor Kaufman, the vice chairman and kind of deal guy, he said, what if we just spin them all out, break these certain businesses off, the ones that were less digital? LendingTree at the time was in the teeth of the mortgage crisis. Mm-hmm. And so we were starting to slide. And said, let's throw LendingTree in there too. We'll do them all low vote. And then that'll get John Malone to come back and do this deal. And if it doesn't, they'll all spin off. Well, Malone never came back on that until many, many years later. And so everything got spun off. Wow. And I, at the time, was trying to raise money to buy it back. It was 2008. And I went to Barry and I said, Barry, I'll go raise the money and buy this because I've always wanted to own a majority of it, own more of it. And I didn't have the money to do it. And he said, how much do you think it's worth? I said, $100 million. He goes, I can't buy a company for 720 and then sell it for 100. He goes, my shareholders, it'll look bad. And I said, but you're going to spin it out and it's going to trade less than that because nobody's going to want to buy an online mortgage marketplace
in 2008.
And all of your shareholders are completely dislocated with the ones who are going to buy this company, which is going to be like a special situation set of investors who are comfortable with micro cap stocks. And your guys are all buying
blue chip,
big behemoth-y, slow growthy kind of things. And we're going to be, so everybody's going to dump it. Wow. So he's like, well, that's what they did. So they threw it out there. it effectively went to zero. And then when it got to like $2 a share or something, maybe it was $3.50 I paid. I took roughly half of most of my net worth and bought LendingTree stock with it.
How much of the company were you able to get back at that time, do you think?
Roughly where I am today, about 20%, but then it's been diluted over the time. So,
Yeah, interesting.
Yep, that was that.
That was that. So it kind of bridging the convo to more modern date. So you come back in 2008. We're at IAC. Seems like you've grown a lot. You worked a lot with Jack. I'm sure your mentality or the way you looked at business may have changed too. Where was the pickup point there? The marketplace had changed. Everyone's more comfortable.
Right.
Maybe the iPhone too at the time. But
no, we did not. We were late to the mobile thing.
Okay. What was
unfortunately
the pickup point in 2008, bridging it to kind of more modern, or maybe?
So the pickup
COVID.
point was back to the flywheel. We realized when the water went out that our marketing was we were drastically overpaying in marketing, and we needed to sharpen our skill sets. At the time, advertising in Google was becoming highly mathematical, and you had people who were really freaking smart. And so I hired a CMO, Gabe Del Porto. I basically had to change a lot of the team. I hired a guy named Gabe Del Porto, who's now on our board. And Gabe he basically said, I want to move the entire marketing team out to California. We're going to completely start from zero, and I'm going to hire everybody over again. We hired like 100 people out there.
Wow.
And then I hired a head of product named Nakul Patel, and he was also head of strategy and did other things later. He's now an entrepreneur. And Nakul really ran technology. And the strategy was, first off, in mortgage, we changed our pricing from closed loan pricing into lead-based pricing only. The reason was I was copying what Google did. Like the way we work with Google, obviously, we're thinking about the total cost of customer acquisition, but we're paying a cost per click.
Yeah.
So I thought as long as we knew that the cost per click is really related to your close rates, then our people would keep focusing on close rates.
Yeah.
What we were finding in that downturn was it was a classic like payables, not quite a payables receivables problem, but we realized we're buying marketing today.
Mm-hmm. Subject to
I'm getting paid in 3 months.
Yeah.
That was working every month because we'd get to we call it static pool conversion rates. You'd get to the time when, let's say 6 or 8 months out when all the revenue is in, and you go, we thought it was supposed to be $100 expected value. It's $105. Up the marketing bids. 6, and then the next month, oh wow, it's up to 110. We thought it was only 106. And when it turned and people couldn't get refinanced, we were still long the advertising. And so we had some deals that were like $200 a lead that we were paying, and we could nowhere near that on the unit economics. Ooh. But even worse, we didn't know that until you got to that 6 months. So we were spending for 6 months
with
at
no forecast.
This, and it turned out like that. And so we were like, whoa, something's got to give. At the time, we also owned a mortgage company, and that was really scaling up.
Home Loan Center?
Home Loan Center. Okay. But we rebranded it as LendingTree Loans,
okay.
And it worked like a dream until it didn't. By the way, it worked like a dream. It just had a loan loss issue. But in any event, it was a great time. So we changed our pricing and expanded our products well beyond mortgage. And personal loans was the next one. At that time, the same thing was happening that happened in mortgage earlier, which was these online lenders, Prosper Lending Club, and they were getting all this sex appeal on Wall Street as a peer-to-peer lender when all they really were was gathered up. They were underwriting personal loans. Mm-hmm. So we did the same thing. We said, why don't you guys become clients? We'll start a personal loan marketplace. We made them early clients. We got some other traditional personal loan lenders, and that business is now really transformed. So,
wow.
That was the thing.
When did you, over time, start to pivot to credit cards, student loans, all these other home products, auto products, and then insurance. Obviously, there was an insurance acquisition, but it seemed like from 2016 through 18, there was a ton of different acquisitions through there. So from a strategy perspective at that time.
So that now, you're now 8 years after this, and now you're in a different strategic mindset.
What was do you want to
pivot point there?
Bridge the gap.
I'm happy. So we grew mostly internally until that kind of 15 or 16 time frame. I brought in a CFO named JD Moriarty. Whenever that date was. JD was a friend of mine from college, and JD said, Doug, it's taken you 20 years to go from 0 to 1 billion in market cap. He goes, I think I can help you get to 10 billion in 5. And
did you believe that?
Yes, because we modeled it out. We modeled it out that we were going to basically go buy, a small, we were weak in SEO. Let's go buy a small SEO business called Value Penguin. Value Penguin is making 8 times EBITDA. We're at 30 times EBITDA. Let's do that. Our market cap goes up. And oh, by the way, we can finance this with convertible debt. So we don't even have to outlay any cash. And we don't need to lay out any stock. And so basically, and by the way, as long as we're not over levered at those future earnings, that's totally great. And that worked until about 2020 and COVID, when the insurance business first turned over, which I can explain why. It really was because of insurance. It was because of inflation. What was happening is insurance companies get their rates approved, let's say in January. You wreck your car in July. There's been 15% increase in the cost of parts and whatever. And now they're losing money on every policy they underwrite. Then the next year came around. They're like, okay, well, let's jack it up. Same thing happened. So for several years, they were literally losing money.
Wow.
And until the inflation calmed down. And so if you're losing, you're not advertising. Of course. They're losing on the units, so they're not advertising. And so that was a pain point. But then insurance came roaring, it's come roaring back in the last couple of years. But that was the second kind of that 08 time was real. The 2001 when we were run out of money was dicey. The 08-09 kind of time was dicey like that. And then you have the 22-ish, that was when all of a sudden you're here and you were 4 times levered at this EBITDA. Now you're 8 times levered. And you're like, shit, like this business is still making $190 million a year. But, now I have to start doing things I don't want to do, right? So the question for me is now, how can I use the capital markets, if you will, as a weapon so that when that happens, like I'm already bulwarked and I've got my war chest sitting there. Right. I mean, you can always obviously see these things in, backwards, but when the crap hits the fan, I want to have my stack of money sitting there, or if I can buy my own stock back or something else. And instead we had to go cut costs so we can get crappy debt so we can pay back these converts, because the converts were going to convert at like 30 or 40% of the company.
Oh my God.
And anyway, so that was that time. And I learned there again, which I already knew this, that like their acquisitions aren't necessarily an easy way.
For growth.
I mean, and that you need to grow at the pace that you can handle it.
Interesting.
So we didn't, for example, spend a lot of time as we bought all these companies, and I have all the deal toys in here to remind me. And there were a couple good ones in there. But and I can tell you what the good ones have been. But I learned in business school from a guy who was a kind of the godfather of it, and I have his book up here. And he said M&A statistically works 50% of the time. And we were at the point where I'm like saying to the board, I'm like, guys, I know M&A is only 50% of the time, but we're like 95. I mean, this is like, we're almost too conservative, and it was great until the economics turned around. And now we've learned, like, okay, we buy something. We're not assuming unit economic increases. We're not, we're not going above a leverage point of this. We're going to, and make sure you're prepared for the rainy day.
That makes sense. Before we get to that COVID era, because it's kind of very unique, well, obviously unique time for everybody, but very unique time for you and in the real estate market too. So for that 16 through 18 is how I've read or perceive were a big acquisition stretch. Were the acquisitions serendipitous where you're like, oh, we came across a student loan product, or was it, hey, we want student loans, go find me the best platform, or we want insurance?
It was a little bit of both, but at that time we had a fully staffed M&A department.
Oh, interesting.
Probably 5 or 6 like smart analysts in there talking with investment bankers,
looking for deals,
and reaching out and seeing what's out there. We were, because another little aspect of the flywheel of LendingTree, the brand by this point is really, really well known. And so we realized that competitively, it didn't make any sense to have like a monoline anything. So I hadn't been in the credit card business forever because credit card companies won't give you access to their real rates until you actually only apply with them. So every credit card comparison shopping you see is like, oh, would you like to – here's 4 ideas. Click one and apply for it. And then we don't know if you applied for it, if you got approved. So I never really liked it. But then with credit card, we said, let's buy compare cards, rebranded as LendingTree, and credit card will be amazing. Let's buy Student Loan Hero, rebranded as LendingTree, and that'll be amazing. But we didn't integrate. We should have integrated all the SEO stuff together. We should have done much more thoughtful integration, but we were buying them and just saying, let them go. Another key mistake was we didn't focus on keeping the founders in all instances. Like when I look back at the deals that worked, we had the founders for several years, and with insurance, we'll talk about it in a minute, but they, those guys are helping lead the company overall. And it's, and not a lot of other lessons learned, but that was the gist during that time, and the market rewarded us for it. But and when the market is rewarding us, we should have been using equity for those deals. Right.
So that's what I was going to ask next, which was, which deals do you think were, in looking back, the strongest deals, and why do you think? But you kind of answered it there a little bit.
So the one that stands out for me as I was thinking about this is Quote Wizard. We bought Quote Wizard for $300 million plus an earnout, which I don't remember how much that was.
370 total.
370.
Maybe? Yeah.
And today, we don't disclose the EBITDA of that business itself, but on a revenue and VMD basis, it's roughly equivalent to EverQuote, which is a market cap over $1 billion. And so that's been a standout, and it's also been a standout because there's really great cultural growth, or cultural synergy. I also think they have a lot of in-office presence, although it's in Seattle. I think that actually mattered, particularly during the COVID years and post. And Scott Perry is now the COO of the whole business. And Ian Smith is amazing and runs our insurance business. And Ian recently is helping out with AI initiatives on small business. He's got a tech background. And so now we're getting, now it's like one unified team going at these markets together, and it's just working like a dream. So,
wow.
Yeah, so it's people.
What was walking into the COVID timeframe, obviously no one predicted that. Before it happened, what were you thinking of the business where you were? Like, hey, we're going to keep doing acquisitions. We're in a great spot. Like, where were you before we got this news? And then how much changed right away?
So, I hated those years. Right before it happened in 2019, I was envisioning and building the company to be what I always envisioned LendingTree would be. So like we founded the same year as PayPal roughly. Like why aren't we PayPal? Like why aren't we da-da? And I could go through why the reasons why are, I think, but not really all that relevant. But and now I felt like it was happening. And Credit Karma, I'm not sure when they got sold, but it was right around that time. I was like, $8 billion, like we should be at least that, right? Our numbers are as big, whatever. I think we're as big as theirs. And let's go. And so I was expecting to continue to scale up. And so I was hiring more more seasoned executives rather than more entrepreneurial ones, still with a great entrepreneurial bent, but I hired people who I thought could help us scale.
Right.
We were getting a new corporate headquarters, which was amazing until nobody wanted to come back to the office. Of course. And when the business started to come down in 2021, 22, again, you didn't know where the knife was going to fall. Right. We had this debt problem that we had to deal with. So that became front and center. And I realized that we needed to have a much more, by the end of it, we had to cut costs again significantly. We realized we were because we hadn't done any integration and stuff. Yeah. So we had bought 5 or 6 SEO businesses that were mostly still operated separately. We hadn't merged back office technologies and things like that. And so there just wasn't much integration. You couldn't get data. You didn't know how big this was over here and that. And so we had to fix that. But we also had to just take costs out too, because again, we were building middle management for blah, blah, blah. Well, then the business is going to be smaller and we're going to have to go back to, it's one great thing about our company is we're very good at pivoting when need to. And the last 2 years have been wonderful. But it's really back to just disciplined thought, disciplined action, having fun. Our team works well together. A lot more people in the office. We know our goals. We have an OKR system now. So we're very good about saying, all right, here's what we need to, here's where we are. Here's what we need to fix. Right. And then go after it. So I always say to people at LendingTree that our core principles boil down to saying open and candid about where we are. But you can't just complain. People love to say either we should or we should focus on the customer experience. Something that's a really nice comment in a meeting. I love to turn those into I wills. Right. And so you identify the issue, recommend a problem, and then ask for the ball. So you can't just say execute. Yeah, and then go execute. Say listen, I want to fix this. Here's what we need, and go do it. Wow.
Where did you cut costs in that 2020 time period? And then also, if I'm recalling correctly,
it was really more 21, I believe. 21. And probably even 20, maybe 22.
It also seemed like your share price was wildly high, or
it was very high. Yeah. I think it started to break in late 20.
And that was from low rates.
It was, okay. Oh, no. The lending side of the business was doing well then.
Got it.
But the insurance business was terrible.
Got it.
And so the insurance business was by then over half of the business, way more than it actually. And so that going down did not account for this getting bigger. And it wasn't gangbusters in every area of the lending space. You had a little refi boom, but it wasn't. It was not long lasted.
Got it. And then, so insurance becomes a huge focal point, obviously, for the company. Yep. In bringing it to kind of more modern data, if you want to bridge those last couple of years, how do you look at each line of, I think you break it down, home, personal, and then
consumer.
Consumer. How do you look at those right now? And then where do you see the most runway for the businesses at this point, too?
So the good news is that even after all these years, probably still less than 10% of loans originate online. So we're still very early days. And but what typically happens is when you have a slow lull period, everybody gets more efficient, and then the market share improves during the next cycle. So I think we're going to go into, assuming that the federal government doesn't bury us in debt again, which drives interest rates themselves. I think we're going to go into an easing cycle from the Fed. But I think it looks like it's going to be gradual.
Yeah.
And that will naturally, well, you already said mortgage rates are coming down.
Right.
It affects, though, not only the rates, it also affects the lenders' willingness to borrow. I mean, if you think about like the money supply, I'm a monetarist, I love Milton Friedman, like, you know, it's putting more money in the system, they're going to lend more out.
Of course.
And that creates unit economic advances in our business because lenders open up filters, they expand to more states, then there's more competition, then the flywheel kicks in. Yeah. And hopefully then you're back to TV advertising again. The difference now, though, is we've done a great job of like back to basics on the business and management there and operations. Now we're trying to make product and tech amazing and really revolutionize the customer experience. Not with any crazy investments, but we changed the process. I brought some new members of the board in, and we were in a very big company sort of way of getting product and tech done, of like submit an idea and have a financial plan and vet it out, and you needed that. But then we were still organized by departments, so we blew that up. We went to dedicated teams working on discrete projects that are totally cross-functional. It's really built on like Marty Kagan, like principles of product development, and promoted somebody in tech, brought in a new CTO. He's now gone, promoted somebody in tech, hired somebody for product, hired a lot more people in product that were better. So we did a big people upgrade there. And with AI coming in, I am more and more convinced that we can like fulfill the original vision of LendingTree.
And what is how do you detail that vision with AI? Like what gets easier? How is it more simple, I guess?
So if you're the borrower, I'm the lender. That's right. So if I were having a conversation with you, I go, hey, Matt, what are you looking to do?
Buy a house.
Buy a house.
Yep.
How much money do you make? You don't need to tell me. Okay. Like, how big's your house? Like, oh, are you really serious about it? Or, you're just kicking the tires, right? A couple questions. Of course. I could figure out, like, your intent, how serious you are. Yeah. So I could figure out how intent you are, right? My dad used to be a cookware salesman, so we would go to fairs and he would sell cookware. Cool. He could very quickly figure out a tire kicker versus somebody who's serious. Of course. To the point that $1,000 set of cookware, he would say to a tire kicker, they'd say, how much is it? And he'd say, $200.
Wow.
And they would say, oh, geez, $200? I can't. That's so expensive.
That's brilliant.
And he knew, he could tell. And he's like, Doug, nobody's ever going to buy it for $200. Don't worry. I'm like, Dad, you can't do that. He's like, Doug, don't worry. Watch us. And
that is so cool.
Anyway, so you're trying to figure out the intent, trying to figure out if they can qualify. So if I know how much money you make and how much house you build, like even, any loan officer would sort of know that. And then, from there, it's like, which is best for you? And then, but if you take that to a LendingTree instance, you fill out a form. Mm-hmm. So I don't know anything different about you than other people, really. Right. I run you against filters to get, if you're qualified. I know if it makes sense for you, but we basically treat everybody the same way. Zero personalization. So, for example, if we're next step of the conversation, I'd say, hey, Matt, I got 5 offers for you. We scanned hundreds of lenders. These 5 matched with you. Yep. Here are your rates. If it's personal loan, 13% to 7%, just like we talked about. Mm-hmm. You'd ask me a question. Well, which one do you think is better, right? Because consumers actually want you to help them make a decision. This is something I realized in 2008, as opposed to just give them options. The first phase of LendingTree is like the Home Depot for lending. It was like, and it still kind of is. But now I like to tell people internally and externally, loans are a conversation, not a transaction. And it's a transaction that is a highly considered purchase. Typically, it's going to happen over weeks and months. It's not like you're going to
Days and
Amazon to
hours.
buy a mortgage, right? It's like you're going to talk about it, then you got to go talk to your wife. You're going to come back. You might read an email from me. You might not. I might call you. You might answer. You might not. Now your phone's ringing. Now you're not answering anybody. We don't use our customer treatment strategy is like if Matt approved and opened email, then send this email, right? So it's not AI conversation based. And what hit me is we have a head of sales, a chief revenue officer named Will Adams. And when my friends would say, Doug, I'm going to use LendingTree to get a mortgage, between trigger leads and our 5 lenders, you would get, and I could talk about trigger, I'd say, you know what, don't do that. Matt, call Will Adams. Here's Will's number.
Right.
And Will, in his free time, would have that conversation with you. And he'd say, hold on a second, I'm going to go make some calls for you. I'll call you back. And he'd be like, all right, I talked to 3 lenders. Here's a situation for you. For that investment property, for what you're looking to do, the best one for you is Fifth Third Bank over and wah, wah, wah. And you might say, well, what are the other options? Or can I change it? Well, no, here's why. Do you want me to put you in touch with them? Bang, put you in touch. And you're going to close that at probably a 90% rate.
Wow.
Because Will is talking with you and understands the right place to do. So you can do that now, I believe, with AI. So we've got several projects working on radically transforming the customer experience through the use of conversational AI.
Wow.
So I think your interaction with lending, like, it should be like you're on chat. Do you use ChatGPT voice a lot?
Yeah.
I mean, it should be like, hey, Doug, like, another offer came in from LendingTree. It's 8.5%. Oh, is it any good? No, actually, versus your other ones, I think this one's actually pretty lousy, right? And okay, well, okay, well, do you want me to move ahead? Should I connect the phone call, right? You could, it's the Will, and so our thing's actually called our project's actually called the Will Adams Experience.
Wow.
How do you give everybody that personalized one-to-one financial advisor feeling from LendingTree? And it doesn't just need to be voice; it can also be the email and things like that. But it should be every way you communicate. So
the experience, I think, in the future, especially for a lot of other companies, probably change radically.
Yeah.
And then with already having a good product, it seems like a good spot to be.
Yep.
And kind of lightly wrapping up, a couple questions I had more kind of personal or how you perceive the business or making decisions. So what do you deem what you are really, really good at? As you've mentioned it a couple times, you see yourself more as an operator, but you've rattled through names and names and names of.
Oh, please.
We've had this CTO, this CMO, this guy, that guy, this woman, that woman, and what do you perceive you as the entrepreneur, the founder, to be like? Hey, I'm really good at this, because I listened to another interview you said, and trying to think which the exact phrase was, but it's like I spent time on stuff that only I can do. I think you mentioned that. It might have been an old interview.
Right.
But so what do you think over all the years you are really good at?
So I actually think, and I pride myself on being a pretty good situational manager. So some people are great at like growth, and some people have that like mindset, or some people be like, you could run a small, I'm great at a small company, but when it gets to this big, I'm, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I think I've done enough different things. And so when I started, I didn't really have any particular expertise. I still don't really, right? Like I don't have a product expertise. I don't have I would say I am most skilled in product creation, and which is a combination of like empathy from looking at things from the customer's perspective, walking in their shoes, thinking about the easiest way. Rick really schooled me in a lot of this of, you can do anything with tech, but there's 3 variables: time, cost, and quality. Pick 2. Yeah. And I'm like, you can't do all 3? No, Doug. And we would go around it. And he's like, you can tell me how to do it, but like this is where, so, we're going to hack this in. We'll do it this weekend. If it's something that's like high security stuff, that might, we're going to do that. Right. So in any event, so I think I'm really good at that. I think I'm very good at picking talent. I think I find that. And I'm open to change and I'm flexible. But I would also say that LendingTree Probably because I didn't have like a ton of expertise coming in. Our vision and how we set up our principles is all about empowerment. So it's like, I assume that I don't have the right answer for everything, but I'm going to empower you to figure it out. I'm going to empower somebody else to figure it out. And so get the right people. It's a Jim Collins thing, right people on the bus, figure out where you're going to go, have clear strategy. I would say putting in, getting that operational, Scott really runs the operations of the company, and he can do it. He does that, and he does it phenomenally. But I really spend most of my time in product and tech and thinking about the new stuff and then how we're going to get there.
Wow. What would you, with a lot of different perspectives on what the role of a CEO is, what is your perception on, like, what do you think the true role of a CEO is?
I think it, it can, I mean,
similar question.
I don't have a crisp answer for that because I think it's going to depend on the situation of the company. So sometimes Rick used to say my management style is pilot holes. He's like, you drill a pilot hole on almost anything. So like I could, and if it's solid, no
Move
problem.
on to the next. Yeah.
If not, pull out the auger and then you go forever and ever and ever. So like I could both delegate our marketing budget to Tom Redden at $60 million a year and not have to micromanage it.
Right.
But I might go spend a lot of time on something cultural where I want to really dig in and make sure it's right. So I think it depends, but I think it's knowing when you dig in, when you let people do it, when you are the decider, when it's a collective decision, how you bring people to something. Do you do it with positivity and persuasion? Do you do it with like discipline and OKRs, right? And now you can do that with a smile on your face too, but there's different, it's a continuous change management job. And you have to be more like a conductor sometimes than a general. Yeah. But sometimes you need to say, we're cutting X million dollars out of this budget by this period of time. Go do it. Mm-hmm. And but so I think knowing when to dig in, when to let go, when you actually can add value, when you can't. And then, trying to work on stuff that only you can uniquely do. So, like, I like to spend more time, like, thinking about the customer experience. So I've spent this summer was really an AI summer because now AI. One of the things we did here is we put ChatGPT Enterprise in. Yeah. And so we have people now creating custom GPTs all over the place. Wow. And so, for example, you can't really see this, but Vita, my chief of staff, I have this rotating role as my chief of staff, and she invented Doug's Daily Digest. The ChatGPT goes in and reads all my emails, can't do my text messages yet, and it links to what I need to spend my time on.
No way.
Like out of my hundreds of emails, these are the ones you need to do, and there's actually links on them from my phone. I get this, and we're not far away from that just being built into my ChatGPT enterprise version, and then everybody at the company will have like something that says, "Hey, Doug, don't forget to do this today." And so the next verse, so we're doing a ton of internal AI stuff, and so like just re-envisioning how you can do HR, how you can do finance, how you can do just keeping each other in the loop, because today you've got, like, for the average employee, you're sitting there with Slack, email, text messages, of course, conversations, notes, summaries.
It's not centralized.
No,
right.
but like with like a ChatGPT Enterprise, you can see the day where you've got like an institutional memory of the company and everybody's on the same page, because like as I use it for product development, first thing I did, we have these one pager that you write. And I took a picture of the one pager, copied it into ChatGPT. I said, you ask me the questions and we'll fill this in. The second thing was, okay, now I want you to be thinking about, are these the right questions? And I want you to be researching and doing the market research and filling this in. And then I got to, at one point, a thing that was the tech spec, the tech requirements. Mm-hmm. And I said, Doug doesn't know anything, Shri to fill in. And my ChatGPT says, can I give it a shot? I'm like, sure. Writes up a full tech spec that I give to Sri, and he goes, that's it.
Wow.
And I was like, dude, like now I can do it. I'm not now talking to a product. Hey, what do you think about this idea? Like,
and he's translating.
Yeah, I'm bringing it to them with like, here's how much work it's going to take. Here's the go-to-market strategy. Here is this. Then the next idea I had, I said, ChatGPT, you write the entire one-pager. You research as if you're the smartest product and tech person on the planet. And it did a really good job. Anyway, so I think it's going to change absolutely everything for more efficiently. And when I tell our employees around AI, and I will attribute this to somebody else because I heard it, I don't know the guy's exact name, but heard it the other day, is everybody's job has drudgery and joy. Automate the drudgery. Spend more time on the joy.
Interesting.
And that's what we're trying to get everybody at LendingTree to do right now.
Fascinating. I could do this for hours. I mean, this is amazing, but to keep you on schedule somewhat, last 3 questions for you. So
right.
in
rapid fire.
Rapid fire. What is the team focused on now in broad? We kind of talked about a lot of those, but I asked the same 3 questions. So, or you personally, what are you focused on right now?
Oh, I'm very, very focused on getting product and tech right, which we already kind of talked about, and making sure that our customer experience advances. It's against a strategy, a stated strategic goal for the year, next 18 months, which we published last year, of making shopping for a loan as easy as shopping on Amazon. So you can have back and forth, you can save it, and we've got specific goals, specific programs, specific things that we needed to do. The first one was operational excellence. So I'm actually our strategy person's like making sure that that's on track, but that's been company wide, and that's been fantastic. So I work on that. But as part of that strategy, AI is kind of the tip of the spear.
So we talked about, I don't want to be redundant here, but so we talked a lot about what the future of the company is, so to speak. So the second part of that I always ask is there any service, product, or market that you haven't been in or been a part of that you would like to see? And I think it's a great question for you.
So I've always envisioned someday, and we're not here yet because the lending market's still big, unfortunately, that we can be a part in the loans and the underlying assets that you're buying. So you could see, not a part, but like you could see, for example, if you're financing a car, we could work with somebody to give you auto quotes as well.
Interesting.
If you're getting a car, if you're not getting a car with us, but we can getting a loan, but we can sell you auto insurance. So like surround them with like those types of things. Small business, which is our fastest growing segment. Right now we're focusing on AI there, and how can you like actually get more loans with the small business lender, with the small business customers, then help them throughout their entire life. So more of that.
And I think that would probably parlay well into the home space, you think, too? There would be?
One that's I've always twinkled with me, but we haven't been able to, this would be a completely different, would be the home services space, the Angie's List space. I think there's a different way to attack that one that would relate really well to homeowners around the world, around the country.
Who do you think, I'm sure there's quite a few, but who do you think helped you the most along the way? So you've built this iconic company. Yeah. Everyone recognizes the logo. It's a universal brand. Who do you think was super pivotal in helping you build the company? Or who did you learn the most from?
I would say my early investors who kept me from being a crazy .com guy. I would say my father from which the cookware business is very much the what we turned to direct marketing online. That from that became direct marketing online and lead generation, which I think is funny. My mentors, I always say it's like the three J's. It's Jim Welch, Jim Collins, Jack Welch, and Jesus. And then a woman named Sarah Sarasvathy. And then it's been a long string of people at the company who've really, LendingTree was very much like a family, and people who dive in and really care. And it's a long string of them who've had significant impact. Probably at the top of the list is Rick Stiegler, though. And I know I keep coming back to him. we haven't had the level of technology innovation since he passed away in 2003 that I'd like to see, and we're getting there, and we've got spurts.
Perfect
and we've
place
had
to
some
wrap
good
up.
stuff.
Doug, thanks for doing this.
This has
Thanks
been a
for
ton of
hosting.
fun. Thank
Make
you.
it
Happen, but that's been a struggle for us to get that amazing, and that's my next meeting here today. So it's on its way, and we're getting better. But we need to be much more nimble and fast and customer empathetic. And it's hard with LendingTree because you can get sucked into the day-to-day business, can get optimized like crazy. And so you can spend all your time there and you don't pull up and go, okay, is this really the right flow that a consumer should experience? How do we build in personalization? How do we use our data completely differently? And those types of things take a little bit longer to figure out.
I bet. I think that's a